Welcome to the Fort Bakersfield Buffalo Soldiers podcast. Our podcast is sponsored by the African American Network of Kern County. The aim of our podcast is to inform, educate, and engage in robust discussion. Each month, we invite guests to our program to discuss topics that concern us in our community. Today, we have our esteemed guest, Mrs. Xenia King. She's the president of Mothers Against Gang Violence in Bakersfield, California. We also have Miss Cynthia Sterling. She's a former city councilwoman of Fresno, California. And then we have Mr. Alex Garcia, current mayor of Wasco, California. And then part of our panel is Major General Slade, General Sandifer, and Lieutenant Renfro. And then General Sandifer said, I'm the moderator, Gary Johnson. I'm a board member of the African American Network of Kern County. So without further ado, let's acknowledge that March is Women's History Month. And we want to take a few moments to allow Lieutenant Renfro to share with us the significance of this acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. It's March is Women's History Month, and I'm the only woman on this committee, so I get to tell these stories. I want to introduce three women who were born in the 1800s and one who was born later. The first is Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who was born in 1825. She became a celebrity as an orator and was second only to Frederick Douglass. She spoke about slavery, civil rights, wrote poetry and essays. She donated profits from her writings to the Underground Railroad. Ms. Harper published the first novel by a Black woman titled Lola Leroy. She publicly called out Susan B. Anthony and other white women who for their lack of solidarity and their racism. Mary Church Terrell was born in 1863. She was pushed out of the suffrage movement by white leaders, so she and others founded their own clubs across the US. The clubs became the National Association of Colored Women in 1896 and worked for job training, equal pay, educational opportunities, and child care for African Americans, while also working for the right to vote. Ida B. Wells was born in 1862. She owned two newspapers and was an anti-lynching activist and journalist. She worked for women's voting rights, was a founder of the NAACP, co-founded the Alpha Suffrage Club, which focused on educating Black women about civics, and they advocated for the election of Black officials. In 1913, while working for women's voting rights, she was told to take her group to the back of the suffrage march. She replied, "Either I go with you or not at all." When she took on lynching, threats forced her to move from Memphis to Chicago, where she lived until her death. And last but not least is the Honorable Cynthia Ann Sterling, who is one of our guests today, and we welcome you. Cynthia was the first African American woman elected to the Fresno City Council in 2002. She's also the first African American woman in the nation to preside over a city council in a city with a population over 500,000. She has worked in civil rights, served on a number of boards, and serves on a number of boards and commissions in the Fresno area. She is the current president of Black Women Organized for Political Action for the Fresno San Joaquin Valley chapter. She is also the owner of Insight Consulting, which specializes in political and business consulting.
Thank you, Lieutenant Renfro, for that special acknowledgement. And then also, all the gentlemen, let's give a special acknowledgement to all the women in support of Women's History Month. So thank you. As General Sandifer said, we have two segments that are going to be packed. with serious conversation, so we'll get right into it. We want to talk about community violence, and I'm going to start with Mrs. King. And I want you to talk about Black awareness, Black on Black violence, and gang violence, and how it impacts what you're doing.
Well, we'll start off with gang violence, what it does to our communities, and that is pretty much it. Well, the impact and the loss. It destroys families. Mm-hmm. It breaks up families. Our families cannot. For many years, we couldn't and we can't survive this kind of impact because it causes mental issues. It causes the breakup of families. It causes our communities to break up. It causes anger, and more death amongst our youth.
Mayor Garcia, community violence in Wasco. Are there programs that really work to curtail community violence and or gang violence in your city?
Certainly, and if I could just dovetail off of what Mrs. King had mentioned, and that is that the impact reverberates beyond just the neighborhoods. It goes into the schools, into the classrooms, into the students' atmosphere, right? So last year, the daughter of one of those who was murdered in a homicide was in, it was in one of the classrooms that my good friend is a principal for just down the street. And she explained to me how these impacts, affect even their classroom, right? Because now this child is impacted, her friends are impacted, her circle and classrooms are impacted. And so it really sends shockwaves throughout the community, beyond just the neighborhoods. And so we have to be cognizant of that. And so when we talk about programs and effective programs, I think we need to make sure that we're balancing an approach that's not only just in the streets and in the neighborhoods, but also working with the schools and community leaders. And we've seen success with that kind of model in other communities like ours, Sanger, for example, right up the street from Fresno, a small community that I worked in the last 5 years. It's just like ours, right? A small community, very close-knit community. And when violence or gang violence strikes in a community like ours, it's felt, right? Not just that night, but for months to come. And so in our community, the residents, community leaders have banded together to create the Wasco Task Force, and it's modeled after the Sanger Task Force. And what they're striving to do is bring together under one umbrella all the do-gooders in the community that are already doing effective good work in the community, but they seem to be operating in silos. So the community group is attempting to do is bring everyone under one umbrella, put aside agendas and denominations, and really work together towards a solution for our public safety issues in the community. So that was one example that's coming together and seemingly beginning to work. But when it comes to other curtailing gang violence, I believe we need to also put real dollars behind those kind of initiatives, right? So in 2019, Kern County disbanded the gang task force, or the unit at the sheriff's department that's specifically tracked gang activity, gang members, and those criminals in our communities, right? And so when that went away, even the district attorney of Kern County said that doesn't make sense, because we see that the majority of homicides in Kern County in 2020 were gang related. And we continue to see gang activity and criminal activity in our community that's pouring over criminal attractions in our community. And we're working on those efforts and on other fronts, but we need real dollars and investments behind programs like the Gang Violence Task Force, or the gang task force unit that we used to have in Kern County. And so I've called on our Kern leaders to reinvest in that unit It's something that we need really the support in. We need the training to go into our classrooms to teach our educators, those who work with our youth, and to train them to track those kind of those signals, right? Those red flags that we all know that we see in young people when they go ahead and are beginning to wade into those kind of gang life and those kind of gang activities. And being able to identify those in our community is key. Sharing those skills with our educators is another innovative attempt to combat crime in our community.
Great, thank you. Ms. Sterling, what is the government's role in this in terms of gang violence? Is there a responsibility, and what laws, ordinance, or community policing can assist in this?
You know, that great question, and I kind of looked at that when I had been thinking about how to respond to that, because in 2021, it's obvious that something is not working. We've had the death of George Floyd, we had the death of Breonna Taylor, but then you look at another area, and I think we're looking at then, these are the police. This is the police violence. This is, to me, what they're attributing to these causes of death. Then you have the situation with Net Young, I believe her name was, the lady in Chicago that they invaded her house and kept her naked for a long period of time, and still to this day, nothing has been done about it. The government should be doing everything it can to help take care of gang violence and to put blocks and roadblocks in the ways of these types of activities. But from what I see today, none of that is going on. In fact, I think we had more prevention methods and there was more observation towards gang violence 10 years ago than there is today. It seems like now what the police and the government are doing, they're not only not enforcing or trying to bring some kind of collective resolution to all of this, they're out here, they are the perpetrators. They have become, to me, and I know this kind of sounds bad, but they're infiltrating the process and making it actually okay to infiltrate gang violence. Just look at what happened at our United States Capitol in January 6th. To this day, we still have Congress people and senators that look at the insurrection at the White House or at the state capitol as something that, well, it was just the Americans expressing their right, frustrated people. Yet there were no police force out there to prevent any of this. You saw no sign of the military doing anything, or the city, Washington, D.C., or any place around making an attempt to say, let's stop this. There was no active, just no sense of urgency at any of this. How do you expect us to bring our gangs under control when we can't even control what goes on at the state capitol, United States Capitol, with white people? The system in itself is broke, and I think we need to take some time to step back and decide and look at how we're going to reapproach this again, because whatever is happening now with our gang suppression and what the government should be doing, it isn't working, not after what we saw January 6th. And I can talk about that on and on a little bit later, but I think we have to look at what's happening and reassess the people that we have put in position to help to make these rules and regulations. It isn't working, at least not here for me in the state of California and throughout the United States, from what I hear from relatives and friends. That's where I am today with it.
Great. We have a few more minutes, so I want to open it up to our panel. Do you guys have any input on this?
Say, General Sanford here. When I taught school a few years back, I'm retired now. one thing that we had back in the, I think, 80s was a DARE program where police would come, officers would come into our classrooms and talk to our students at least once a week. And I remember having students to write letters to the police department about what was going on in their communities, et cetera. And as a result, 2 years in a row, the police chief came and visited my classroom because he wanted to help. What happens to programs like that? And Mayor Garcia, you alluded to the fact that the gang unit was dismantled. And Ms. Sterling, you mentioned that how programs have been terminated. Have we taken a step backwards, you think, in our reaching out to young people today?
I think from my perspective, I think we're sending mixed messages. I think the gangs and the kids that are out there now, especially in the wake of COVID, what we've been through the last year, this has just been a breeding ground for a new type of gang. They become more sophisticated because the system in itself, to me, is broken. Yes, the police chiefs have come out. Yes, there's still the conversation that we're going to do this and do that. When I was on the council in between 2003 through 2011, we implemented body cameras. We put cameras throughout our community. I made sure that we implemented the newest technology and that there was money there for these types of situations. But now we're seeing where what's happened is that it's become more sophisticated and our youth have become more sophisticated, that I think we've kind of lost track of how do we get this under control. It's a new group of gang violence. Young people understand now that their parents they're suffering, they're hungry. We're waiting for stimulus checks. We're trying to do things that we think should be to help get our country back on track. But it leads to looting and to vandalism and stuff like that. And that's part of what leads to the gang problems, because there's nothing for our young people to do. Now we have to take a different approach on how we're going to address this topic. I think after this last 4 years of Donald Trump, he used such terminologies and conversation that didn't make it easy for Black youth, especially, to look at the world and say, is there anything out here for me? Because there was no positive injection that we're going to do something to help you. Instead, we're going to incarcerate you and we're going to treat you like you're criminals. But yet when the white counterparts do something, they're just given a slap on the hands or they're totally ignored. And so it isn't working. So I hear what you're saying and I understand it and I can appreciate it, but I think we have to come to a new set of understanding on how we're going to address our young people and how we're going to reach out to them. And one of the areas that I'm working now with is a group called SynCal Mentoring. And the idea is to mentor the mentees. You have to mentor them before they get to the mentorship program. How do you even teach children the basics, give them a reason to want to do and be a part of the system when they have no examples or anything to in front of them? Most of their parents aren't working. They're not working. So if they're not working, how are they going to get jobs? There's no example to be an example for anyone. Anyway, I could ramble on about this for a long time.
No, that's great dialogue. What we'll do is we'll move into segment 2, which is a series of questions for any of you guests to chime in on. The first question is, what does gang violence do to families and communities?
Well, I touched on that earlier, and I'll repeat it, and that's it sends shockwaves throughout the community, into the schools, into the classrooms, and so their peers share that grief with them. They take that home into their homes, into their families, and in a sense, it's a community way of sharing that grief and coming around these families that have experienced loss. But at the same sense, it sends a signal to communities that it might not be safe out there, and we have to work very hard to restore that sense of safety on our streets every day.
Would anybody else like to respond?
Yes, I would like to respond to some a few things. You kind of asked a question again, but anyways, I would like to go back to the teachers. I listened to, I think that he's the mayor. I want to say his name correctly. I don't see him up here on the screen, on my screen.
And Mayor Alex Garcia, that's right. That's me. Thanks.
Okay, Mayor Oscar, I'm sorry.
Alex, sorry.
But anyways, I would like to go back to the teachers. I feel, my personal opinion, teachers are here to teach. People like myself should be in the classrooms teaching them. People like myself should be in the classrooms talking to the children to see what they're interested in, to find out what's on their mind, to find out what do they know about gang violence. Our teachers can't teach or talk to our kids about gang violence when they've never lived or been around gang bangers. I'm a person that has. So I should be the person, or a person like me, be in that classroom asking these kids, what do they know about it? What do they know about it? Our teachers, if something's going on with the child or they see a bruise or something like that, they're called Child Protective Service. They're a mandated reporter. But if they see a kid with a rag in their pocket, tattoos on their bodies, or using a certain kind of slang, they don't know what to do with that. They don't know what to do with that. They'll just say they're bad kids. And at the end of the day, what you're going to see is them suspended or expelled from school and kicked out of every school here in Kern County. That's what you're going to get. As for like our parents, to go back to the parent ordeal, I feel like we should start with in the home. And yes, I agree with Miss Cynthia Sterling. When she was talking about certain things with the police department, and that's true to a certain degree, because you have these different people and they have a theory, and they're treating our people with that theory as to what they think that we do and how we accept things and how we go on our daily life, and they don't know. They're not the people that's walking through those parks, walking down those streets, seeing those drug addicts, those prostitutes, those dead bodies, or getting shot. I mean, I'm a person that I didn't have brains in my hair before. I'm a person that was 8 months pregnant that rolled down a wall because somebody was getting murdered before my face. So no, it starts at home. I was fortunate enough to have two parents that worked, but I also had friends that didn't have that electricity on. Where the parents, it wasn't that they just didn't have a job. Some parents had a job, but their checks went to drugs. So and they just had that welfare cheese, that bucket of a jug of water, that kind of thing. The no school clothes. And when young men, they see this, when these young men see this, and they have a single mom, they get out there and they become the man of the family. See, this is what people don't get. They become the man of the family. They're too young to get into any kind of trade. There's no man around. So that gangbanger that gets a hold of him, he's going to say, hey, I'm gonna put a gun in your hand, and I'm gonna put a sack of dope in your hand. And you get over there and you take care of your people. You take care of your mama and the kids. And what he got to do for him is kill. Get out, rob, and kill whatever he can do to put money in his pocket, because he didn't put money in his pocket to take care of the family. So if we're gonna do something, let's start with this young man that feels like he has to be the man of the family. You know, because me personally, I think it's a cop-out that, hey, this person doing this, hey, this person doing this, because if they wasn't doing it, the police department wouldn't have a job. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't be getting paid. The police department get paid because we have criminals, gangbangers, and everything else in our communities, and this is why they have a job. So if we attack it at home and go into the house with the parents and teach these parents what's happening with their kids, to get these parents more involved in their kids' lives, get these parents to go to those schools and find out what's happening at those schools, get those parents to walk up the street with their kids if they have to. I mean, that's where I would begin. Okay. That's where I would begin. So,
yeah. And that's great. And thank you for the passion.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Compton.
Mm-hmm.
In the 70s, and I was always told that I had a better chance of going to jail or being murdered before the age of 25. So that was what was impregnated in me, and I had a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate enough to have men who reinvested back into the community,
mm-hmm.
and took a bunch of us under their wings and gave us a different vision of what life could be. So
mm-hmm.
that we didn't have to do some of the things that the other guys in the neighborhoods are doing. And so for me, I've taken that and I use that to give back. And so the thing or the charge that I put out to folks is we've got to mentor. We got to go back into these communities and get these young men. I know women are doing it too, but you know, for me, I'm going back to rescue these young men who don't think they have hope. And I can attest to, I come from the same area. I have a college degree,
mm-hmm.
I made great money in a career, but it was all because some individuals came and invested in me and said, hey, there is a different way. There's a better choice. There's a better road. I was about 11 at the time, and it gave me an opportunity to even think about college. I didn't think college was possible. These men helped me to start thinking about college at 12 years old. So guess what? When it was time to go to college, I was able to go. And so I think some of that is what has to happen. I'm going to move into question 2 to keep us on time. What can people in the neighborhoods do to help decrease violence?
I'd like to
Bring awareness.
say something there, that we've all touched on it. And we've all heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Growing up in Fresno, if I was out there doing something, when I got home, my parents knew about it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there was no doubt that some adult was going to let my parents know what it was I was doing that was not proper. The neighborhood looked out for each other.
Yes. Yeah.
If my mother or father wasn't there to see what was going on in the neighborhood, there was another adult there. Have we lost that? We're now getting to the point where you may live in a neighborhood for ages, but do you know your neighbors? Are you comfortable with your neighbors coming to you and saying, hey, look, I saw this, or this is going on, and you know, I'm just letting you know we need to do something to address it. If my parents were at work and I was supposed to be in and I was out, they may not know, but I bet you when they got home, they knew about it. Mm-hmm. I had a curfew. I was supposed to be in at a certain time. I was not out roaming around all day and night. And like I say, I see kids now, young kids. And I'm thinking, why are they out roaming the streets at this time of the night? Where are their parents? And if their parents aren't there, I see Ms. Sterling has something to say about that.
Ms. King, I think, hit on it. You know, what it is the parents are the kids themselves raising the kids. And here, this is what you see, because I was born up the same way. I never had a chance to get in trouble, so all I could become was a politician. I had no reason to be in trouble because we couldn't go out. But nowadays, the parents don't have a foundation in which they can take care of their children. The sad situation is that the neighborhoods have gone away, and that accountability of families being neighborhoods knowing each other, the block parties, the things, or whatever it was that kept us all together, it isn't there anymore. You know, let me say this, and that's the other thing that we're guilty of. Coming up in Fresno, we had neighborhoods. We had a place called the Hinton Center right in the center of town, and we kept the building up. It was established by older members of the community, Cecil Hinton, my father and mother, community members, not all prominent, but people of the community that came together. They built it and they took ownership on it. When I go over there now and I see this location, it is totally devastated. It's not even fit for anybody to live in or walk in or to do anything in. You can't bring any social organizations or nothing there. But when you go on the north end of town, the community centers over there, this was a community center, the Cecil Hinton Community Center. The community centers on the other end of town, they're all plush and beautiful, have green grass around it, and they're well kept by the city. The location in which you do things to give children an outlet to come to, if you don't have pride and can't keep it up, then or there's no money to do so, or the city doesn't take that pride in doing so, then you need to hold your elected officials, those that are responsible for doing this, accountable. That's why I ran for the seat that I ran for. I wanted to make sure that my neighborhood was taken care of. So I made sure that the money went into the Hinton Center, that there was a place for basketball games, baseball games, Juneteenth celebrations, or just community areas where we could do jazz nights and you could come and sit out, gangs, members, everybody could come. It was just a place to come and be comfortable. And this is what we don't have anymore. We don't have neighborhoods with open space that's attainable for our young people. The other things is there's no jobs. The kids as parents aren't working. So therefore the drugs and the dope and all of the activities, the prostitution becomes more of a lifestyle because it's an alternative means for putting money in the pocket. Sometimes women are prostitutes, not because they want to be out there doing that. And in most cases they don't. It's because this is how they feed their children. And in many cases, the young men aren't gangbangers because they want to be, but it's how they're taking care of their families because they have no centers or community areas in which the community can come together on. We've come separate and not whole. The churches used to be places that we could do these kinds of activities. They're not there anymore. Instead, we live in our own silos, and that's part of the disruption. How can you take a child in school and figure he or she is going to be focused on the lesson plan when he just got through seeing, and Mrs. King was saying she had brains in her, and you've seen this kind of situation. That's traumatic. They grow up with that, and then they develop different lifestyles or different inadequacies in their situation. So I think the accountability is there's money. Because I've been in politics and I know how it works. And that's what's so devastating. It's the political will is this. We as a community now must make sure that the people we elect and we put in seats, that they are held accountable to their positions. I was held accountable to my position. I may not have always been the most liked, but I can tell you one thing, there was never, I got the job done. And when there was money to fix, things like infrastructure, when, there was a lot of money back in the early 2000s for redevelopment agencies, which were stopped under Governor Jerry Brown because of because people were not appropriating the funds properly. But the infrastructure money, the money for infrastructure improvement, was what the redevelopment agency was all about. And I served as the president of the redevelopment agency, and I was on the planning commission with the city for 13 years. So I understand how this all works. That money was to go into the community. One of my first jobs when I got on the city council was to make sure that all public service money that's directed to blighted and impoverished communities, which I served, got back into blighted and impoverished communities. That meant that the unions had grants and funds, which, because the city was under a union structure, the union, then you went out and you fixed the curbs and sidewalks. I had to have a young man shot and paralyzed. So he's trying to get to school, which is a block away, but he can't get off the curb in a wheelchair because there was no curb cuts. So that was one of my first actions, was to make sure that the 500 curb cuts in this, blocks in my city, in my district, were handled free by the city of Fresno, so that every curb cut, wheelchair accessibility for handicapped people was there. Now, I challenged my council brothers. It was me and 6 other councilmen, and I was the only woman. And believe me, that was a job in itself, just being there with them. I had to fight the whole time I was there. But you know what? I got it done, and I got it, all 7,000 of them done in the city of Fresno, because I shamed my council brothers for not doing that. These are the things that you have to take back to give back to your communities in order for people to see that you have an interest. Then you can start, you know, addressing the gang problems. But that's, anyway, like I said, I get off on tangents.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move to the next question. It says, in most cities in America, community gang violence is readily seen in the inner cities, and it spreads to our inner city schools. Why, and what needs to be done to address that problem?
Again, the educators and the council and the electeds have to come together to see what are the problems addressing the neighborhoods. You know, the one thing about the COVID pandemic that allowed me to see how education was administered is everybody that went on the public computer system or the online learning had the same curriculum. Did any of you ever stop and look at the fact that the disparities on how our children are taught in different neighborhoods is based on the structures in which certain neighborhoods get different types of teaching methods? Some of the poorer neighborhoods don't receive the same type of instructional opportunities. But when we went on online learning, everybody had to receive the same type of instruction. The problem was the inadequacies in our homes. All the blighted and impoverished poor neighborhoods should have access to internet and Wi-Fi so that there's educational opportunities available in their homes. There should be something on all corners and blocks. The lines should be put in. But if the community isn't taught that this is available to them by the Amazons and the Comcasts and what have you, then they don't know it. These services are supposed to be free to our communities, but that's just a thought too.
Okay. Would anybody else like to address that question?
Well, with the question of spread to inner schools, and I think this, I'll go back to parents again, because out here where I live at now, everything gets done. The street gets done once a year. I go to my old neighborhood, there's holes all over the place. The signs are down. There's holes in the park. There's old this and old that. There's a school next door. But these kids out here, these parents out here, you can't talk to them about, and since I've been an activist, you can't talk to them about what their kids are doing, because this is where the money comes in. This is how it's getting to school. Even the good schools got this problem. And I'm gonna go back to what she said earlier, this a different type of gangbanger. what they're called hybrids,
Yes.
because they got money. They got money, and what they do, these parents give these kids money, and these kids go to these other schools, or they go to these other neighborhoods, and they get in there, and they kind of got to be harder than the person that's actually been through the hardship, all the hardship in their life. But they can provide the guns. They can provide money to get the drugs. They can provide all of those things. And then they become the hardest crip on the yard. You know, that's just the way it is. And they go from school to school. And this is, I'm going to jump back to the parent, because those rich parents, those wealthy parents that's giving their kids this money, where these kids is having cars at 15, 16 years old. A lot of these drive-bys is done in these cars. That when these kids is in these schools and helping these other kids, all these kids is getting together and they're traveling to these different schools and different neighborhoods, that these parents should be accountable for it. If you got money to give your kid and you got money to give them, and they're spending it on drugs and guns and the homies and becoming the biggest crip on the yard, then you should be held accountable. You should be paying for something in our neighborhood. You should be paying for something in our schools. You should be paying for any kind of bills. If that person with that money went over there and murdered this other person to be the biggest crip on the yard, you should be paying money to that family. Because at the end of the day, the kids wouldn't be able to do all these things if you wasn't funding it. So.
Mayor Garcia, I want to ask you the next question. What can be done to deter youth from joining gangs? That's both male and female.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've discussed and touched on a number of different ideas and solutions and tactics, right? And we look at the conversation around criminal justice and public safety, not only here on the local level, but across the state and nation. This whole conversation around the new age of community policing, right? And really, I just think it's a good old-fashioned neighborhood watch, right? Good old-fashioned getting out there, talking to your neighbors, getting into the streets, creating a presence so that those bad and criminal elements know that this isn't where they're welcome. And so what we've done in our city is create the task force. And one of the initiatives is to create a program called Wasco Walks. And what we do is not only arm them with information to educate their neighbors about the initiatives at the city, such as the investment into a program to reimburse families or households, businesses as well, for installation of surveillance cameras on their property. And that's to bolster the sheriff's camera registry program, and so that we can, so folks can provide potential evidence or tips and help investigations and do their part in the community through that program privately and anonymously. In addition to that, we're getting folks healthy and active and involved into the solution at community-wide. We've set, we look forward to setting a community-wide step goal so that we can achieve that together, taking steps towards safety. And just really kind of listening to the community and what they want, right? If they've said they want cleaner alleys, so we've also invested in trash pickers and other cleanup programs in our alleyways in one of our hardest hit neighborhoods. But going back to what works and what not, right? We've seen that, you know, going full-blown accountability, when you just hit the community and young people with the badge, like we've seen, programs like DARE and some of the tactics, there's a reason why it wasn't as successful, because of the messaging of the 80s and the 90s around criminal justice. But the point I'm trying to get to is, when beyond just being accountable on one hand, and this is my strategy in Wasco, we have accountability on one hand, but we also have to have opportunity in the other, right? So while we're cleaning up the streets, doing probation sweeps, and sending the message that criminal elements are not welcome in our community, we have to provide opportunity in the other. So we've worked with America's Job Center and programs like Field to come out and potentially do a job fair in that park that's in one of the hardest hit neighborhoods of our community, so we can send the message to the young people that, hey, if you want an opportunity or a way out of that lifestyle and a way to bring your family out of poverty, here's an opportunity. Here's a way to get engaged. And if you're not going to take that opportunity, then you're going to end up seeing the other hand, and that's accountability. And that message has been sent clear. And through Wasco Walks, this group of concerned residents, we're really taking back our ownership and safety and a sense of safety in our neighborhood. And really, we can put the investment dollars as a city and do our efforts on as a government, but we really have to be met in the middle, right? The community has to do their part. They have to realize their responsibility, and the onus is also on them, because we can pay for a deputy on every street corner or a camera on every street, but crime still happens, right? And crime is still going to occur. But we need the input and support of neighborhoods and families, and the only way to do that is to get people bought into the mission of improving the safety on our streets, and we're attempting to do that. It's not going to be overnight. It takes a while to turn a ship, and we're doing that slowly, but we're moving towards that direction, and I look forward to working with those parents in the community to really move the needle on crime and activity in Wasco.
Absolutely. Mrs. King, I want you to address this question. What are effective alternatives to gang involvement?
To bring awareness, bring gang awareness to the families. Make them aware of, talk with the parents. Have the parents talk with the kids. When they see that gang violence or something might be brewing with the kids, to get involved and see what's going on. Because a lot of parents, some parents, and I'll say especially the ones out here where I live, they don't know what's going on. So my thing would be for the parents to get more involved in their kids' lives, because a lot of parents have dropped the ball. And I heard them say the poverty-stricken, this and that, but they have an excuse. They have an excuse. They don't have all of this education. They don't have all the things that other people have. But you have these other people that has a lot. They have a good living. They have good cars. They have good neighborhoods. Parks even got exercise equipment in it. So to get these parents more involved in their kids' lives. And that's from the poor to the rich. Not send your kids off to boarding school or buy them whatever they want, or you yourself that probably don't know how to read and write, that don't have a job, or just messed up, period. Don't ignore your babies. Don't ignore your babies. Get involved in their life. Understand what they're doing, when they do, and try your best to direct them in the right way.
And if I could add to that, parents need to not only get involved in their schools and their children's education, but in the community, right? There's beyond city council, there's boards, commissions, oversight committees over a various number of issues that affect our communities. I'm sure there's one in every city, and I'm sure the former councilwoman would agree. We need those loudest voices in the community that love to complain in the comment section, right? To really step up, right? And to kind of be a part of the solution rather than being a keyboard, banger. Step up. And I send that message to everyone in the community, stakeholders, right? Even candidates of past elections, right? They throw their name in the ring for a council member, but then they disappear until the next election. And I've said that many times, and I'll say that again. We need everyone at the table, not just when it's sexy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Sterling, I want to ask you the next question. What can police departments do to help decrease gang violence?
Don't just be out there when there's a shooting or there's a crisis, and then we don't see you anymore, or you're the first one to pull your gun or be at the scene of the crime, but you're not engaged at the schools. Children should know who's representing them. They shouldn't, they need to know this, because there's a great divide. There's a great divide. There's just a great divide. I think they need to become more engaged.
I want to read something real quick. This is from the South Carolina College head basketball coach. He says, "You know what makes me sick to my stomach when I hear grown people say that kids have changed. Kids haven't changed. Kids don't know anything about anything. We've changed as adults. We demand less of kids. We expect less of kids. We make their lives easier instead of preparing them for what life truly is about.
Yeah.
We're the ones that have changed." Anyone on the panel want to address that?
Go ahead.
Yes, the parents have changed. I mean,
Yeah.
I look at some of the kids are forgotten about, and then some of the kids are made into, have you heard of the trophy wife? Where kids are made into little trophies. They don't have to do anything when I was growing up, I had to earn. If I wanted something new, or if I wanted something for Christmas, or if I wanted a certain birthday party, I had to earn it. Now, it's just your birthday. You get whatever you want, whatever shoes you want, $200-300 pairs of shoes you have on your feet. For what? For just being you? And sometimes a good grades, because it's kind of saying to the public, look at me. I take care of my kid. You see the kind of shoes he got on, the kind of clothes he got on, and he didn't have to do anything to earn it. This is me. So it's about the parent, making the parent look good. When it should be, you see my kid, he's educated, he has goals. I'm a part of his life. To me, that's good parenting skills, because your child reflects you. But some parents see it as, I got my kid a car, 15 years old, no license, no permit, but he got a car. I am a good parent. And so with these kids, they're not earning anything. They're not earning anything, so they feel they're entitled, and they can treat anybody the way they want to, because they're not taught those manners, those values at home. They're taught that the world revolves around them.
Absolutely.
That I wanted better for my children, and I still made them earn whatever I gave them. Me and my husband, we put our foot down. This is called parenting. This is called parenting. This is coming home. This is taking care of your children. This is working. This is sitting down at your dinner table, finding out what your kids' interests are. Show our kids what they could be. We got Barack Obama around here, the first black African-American male to be president of the United States. We got a vice president that's a woman, Miss Harris. Thank the Lord on that. Because I want my daughters to look at that. I want my granddaughters to look at that. And they can be anything that they want to be.
I agree wholeheartedly. I raised 3 boys and a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I set the expectation that college wasn't an option, it was a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
I think the expectations that we set, we can help our kids move along. Now, as a parent,
Absolutely.
I had to change too, because I would always tell them to get good grades. And one of my sons said, well, Dad, why do I need to have good grades? And I had never thought about, maybe if we gave them a reason and tell them why they need to get good grades, it would be easier for them to go through the process. And so I think, yep, we've got to be tough on parents. As parents, we have to adjust. But more importantly, we've got to help set precedents, set the goals, and have higher expectations of our kids. I think, reading that, hearing that from that coach, he's right. Kids haven't changed. What do they know? They don't know anything. They move based on what we do. And I think more of us want to be friends to our kids than we want to be parents to our kids.
Right.
And so I'm going to open it up to the group for a couple of minutes, and then I'll ask the last question. Is there anybody on the panel that want to add anything?
There should be one time the week when they can come together as a family, and we sit and we have a conversation, and we should know get our children to talk about what their fears and their hopes and their desires are and the things that are troubling them, because that's an area that we're seeing more now, children committing suicide, hurting themselves, or because they don't fit in, or they don't have, like you say, in all the clothes and stuff, because we're trying to be more than what we are. We're trying to do that and show our kids. We have to spend more time becoming more in tune with our children, understanding their needs, or including their friends in, because maybe we have a good stable background where we can bring our children into our home, but the neighbors, their best friends, don't have that because their parents are working, or they just don't have any parents. Then we bring the children into the house and we include them and we show them and give them an example. We have to become more in tune with our children. That's my thought. Is conversation, is reaching out to them. Don't have to have a lot of money. All of us come from different backgrounds. All of us are, living, trying to do and get by, but we have to become more in tune with the children. And I totally agree with Mrs. King wholeheartedly. You can't just give. Even if you're the aunt, the grandparents, and what have you, you cannot spoil the kids, because what happens is you create your own monsters. And a lot of that is what's happening. But those that don't get spoiled and don't have that opportunity to get all of that, I guess that's the way to put it, then they become maybe the gangbangers or the harder criminals or what have you. We've got to become more in tune with our children. We've got to pay attention. We've got to talk to them.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask this last question. And I want to pose this to Ms. Sterling and the mayor. The question is, how can we who are adults help our youth make better decisions about directions in their life? But I want to take it a step further. I was on a call where we were asked to become better citizens. And I think, and what they kind of talked about was how to get involved, how to go to city planning meetings. Basically, they were saying we need to be better stewards of citizenship. So as you're answering that question, I want you to give folks out there who are listening, who want to help, who want to make a difference, what does that really mean, and how can they incorporate that into their daily lifestyles in terms of being better citizens, being better involved on a local community, involved in those decision makings, which is their right as folks who lives in those communities?
For me, and I'm just going to bring it back to today, in 2021, March 13th. As the former city councilwoman, we have a COVID center set up for vaccinations in our city. And we have one of our schools named after our former Black principal, Rutherford B. Gaston. It's Gaston Middle School. What I have had a problem with, it's in the community, and some of the problems that the people have said to me was, Ms. Sterling, we can't get vaccinated because it's this, or it's that, or they won't call me back. Nobody will pick up the phone and say anything to me. So I found out that, sometimes I have to assert my authority still, which I hate to have to do, but I do, is I make phone calls to different situations, and I'm in a nice way, is that when the community calls, whoever you are, you take their calls because they're calling me back. And if they call me back and disrupting my day from things that I could be doing to help be a better citizen, then I want to know why this mother can't get her children vaccinated, or she can't get vaccinated because you can't get to her, or whatever the case may be. I say that to say this, as a former politician and someone who stays involved in it, we have to take our responsibility for the roles that we play and stay in leadership at all times. Maybe not always out front, not running for office or what have you, but when we need to step up, we need to step up and say to the community, you're not doing your part, or we need to be that voice, or we need to bring people together when they don't know how to do it. One of the things I found out is people don't know how to get involved on boards and commissions. So I make it my responsibility with Black Women Organized for Political Action, that at our general meetings, we're teaching everybody how to get on boards and commissions, those of us that have been in those positions. And then we take that out to other boards and commissions, other organizations, so that they can continue to reach out to their communities. You have to stay front and center. You get tired, but you have to stay front and center. And when someone calls and says, my child has been shot and I don't know who to call, well then, instead of calling the funeral director, sometimes they need to get a judge or a lawyer, then I make sure that I call certain people and say, I need you to help them. I need you to do this, that, and the other, because the people just don't know. And so I've been privileged in order to learn this and have an understanding. So my right is to make sure that I teach you and that you know what to do. And I do it with a kind heart and a smile and with patience. And that's what you have to do, because God gave me that gift to put me out here front and center. So I'm like this: if Cynthia Sterling calls you, you know she wants something. So I expect supervisors and everybody to jump when I call. Because if you don't, I will make your life miserable because you're hurting somebody else. That's my attitude. That's my attitude. And don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Breonna Taylor's parents got a millions of dollars settlement, but they never got justice for her crime, for her death. Angelique, the young lady that was stood there naked before all these people, they were on this disrupt and dismantle program that I saw that night for policing in Chicago, and they haven't even had any kind of response to that. It doesn't happen in my world. You just don't want it. You don't want Cynthia Sterling involved. That's the way it is. And it's unfortunate it has to be like that, but I'm just not that person. I can't do that. And because I have a son. And like I told the Chief Dyer then at that time, you don't want nothing to happen to my son, his friends, and I don't care what color they are. When my son calls me and says, Mommy, so-and-so got hurt, his last name is Hernandez, or this one is Islamic, or something like that, then I'm standing up there. So Chief Dyer and I, we know each other very well, and even though he's mayor now, I'm not on any of his boards or commissions because he doesn't call on me, but he hopes I never call him either. That's just my attitude. That's the way it is. I'm too old.
Great. Mayor Garcia, I'll let you finish out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Basically, well, I mean, we see that it's public safety, criminal activity, and gang violence is a very complex issue, right? We see how it's going to be a variety of tools to tackle this issue, but one of which, and as cliche as it sounds, I think we need to just go back to the basics again, like I said, with the neighborhood watch groups, getting involved with a career, fairs and opportunities at the schools, to show that, public service is a noble, career and career field that people can step into. And we see these, these ebbs and flows in different careers, right? In 2008, the interest in education and becoming teachers was, died down because of the disinvestment by government, but that's another conversation. But that's coming back. And now we see that same things happening in police departments, right? Being able to attract local homegrown talent. And I'm confident that will change too with some of their approaches to policing. But same thing can be said with public service, right? We have to do our part to show that there is opportunity to serve in various different ways, right? Being a council member or elected member or mayor, it isn't the only way to be a good public servant. We need tech gurus. We need people who are good at writing, who are being, good at organizations and being in the city apparatus. And so we have uniquely, in Wasco, a very diverse administration, right? Me being the youngest and first openly LGBT elected official in Kern County as mayor. We have one of the youngest city managers around, and we have with the exception of one, but all female executive directors. And I just appointed 4 out of 5 appointees to be female on all of our boards and commissions this month and this year to date. And the reason to say that is it's important that young people see themselves represented, right? And in those types of opportunities that we don't normally see, right? And so we share those that vision and that opportunity for other young folks by going to career fairs and sharing our stories, being an elected official in a small town. You're almost an ambassador, right? We don't have big economic development departments. So we ourselves are tasked with sharing our story of the city, sharing our own stories, right? And how we got there and the trials and tribulations of leadership. And being able to tell our story and being a good storyteller is key part of being a good community leader, so that you can share those opportunities with our community members and residents and families, like Ms. Sterling had mentioned, right? We have to share those opportunities with folks. I have a very strong presence on social media, and I invite all my residents to follow me there. And we get the word out whenever there's something going on in the city, an opportunity comes up, an appointment is available. And I do my best to get the word out to my niche in the community. My colleagues on the council do have their thumbs on different pulses in the community as well. And we work together cohesively to get the word out to the folks. And so that's one thing I've been pushing our city to do, is to establish a social media policy. Some other cities have done really well to tell their story, right? Not only being able to share those opportunities, but literally just quick 15-second clips about, this is what a public works person does. This is what a sanitation supervisor works on. This is what a street supervisor does, right? And so sharing those opportunities and what those careers look like for young people in public service is also key.
Well, I want to thank all of you, Mrs. King, Mayor Garcia, Ms. Sterling, on behalf of the African American Network of Kern County and the Buffalo Soldiers. We thank you for your valuable input. This is a great podcast, and we look forward to having many more and hopefully having you guys come back. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anytime.